Have you ever wondered what happens when a society abandons its moral compass? What are the consequences when people stop following divine law? The result may be far more devastating than you can imagine. Today, we dive deep into one of the Bible's most shocking and controversial stories, found in the book of Judges, chapters 19 to 21. This isn't just an ancient tale, it's a gripping narrative that exposes the catastrophic effects of moral decline and the chaos that follows when people turn away from righteousness. In a time when Israel had no king, each person did what seemed right in their own eyes, and what unfolded next shocked the nation and tore the very fabric of society. But what exactly went wrong? And how can this story, buried in the pages of history, hold lessons that resonate with us today? In this video, we'll reveal the hidden truths behind these chapters, uncover lesser-known details, and explore the profound consequences of actions that spiral out of control. As we journey through this intense story, you'll learn why this tragic account is far more than just a historical event, it's a warning and a lesson for us all. What does it teach us about justice, accountability, and the power of collective decision-making? Stick with us till the end, because this story may change the way you think about society, morality, and the consequences of our choices. Welcome to Legend Story, where we uncover the powerful lessons hidden in history. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, so you never miss a story that could shape your understanding of the world. Before diving into the aftermath, let's examine the chilling events that initiated this story. A Levite, traveling with his companion, stops in Gibeah seeking shelter. An elderly man, embodying kindness, offers them a safe haven for the night. However, the peace is shattered when a group of men from the city surrounds the house, making horrifying demands. In an attempt to protect his guest, the elderly host makes a decision that alters the course of events entirely. The Levite's companion is sent outside, where she suffers unimaginable cruelty throughout the night. By morning, she is found collapsed at the doorway, unable to endure the night's torment. What follows is even more shocking. Overcome by grief and anger, the Levite takes a drastic step. He divides her remains into 12 parts and sends them to the tribes of Israel, a harrowing message to call attention to the injustice. This act sends shockwaves through the nation, uniting the tribes in outrage and setting the stage for a conflict that will leave a permanent scar on Israel's history. But before we unravel the war and its consequences, we must first pause to understand the events in Gibeah, a city that became a symbol of societal collapse and moral decay. The gruesome events in Gibeah didn't just end with shock and grief, they triggered a chain reaction that exposed the deep fractures within Israelite society. The Levite's act of sending the remains of his companion to all 12 tribes of Israel was more than a call for justice, it was a desperate cry to awaken a nation that had lost its way. The response was immediate and unified. Leaders from all the tribes gathered at Mizpah, appalled by what they had witnessed. The question on everyone's mind was, how could such a heinous act happen among us? This wasn't just an issue of one city's moral failure, it was a reflection of the lawlessness and disunity that had spread across the land. When the tribe of Benjamin, to which Gibeah belonged, refused to surrender the perpetrators, the situation escalated. The other tribes, incensed by Benjamin's defiance, declared war. What followed was a civil conflict so intense that it nearly obliterated an entire tribe. But beyond the physical battles, this story reveals something much deeper, the dangers of moral relativism. Without a unified moral code or leadership, society had descended into chaos, where personal desires and self-interest overshadowed righteousness and justice. The question remains, was this purely a failure of leadership, or was it also a failure of accountability within the community? Before we explore the devastating war that ensued, let's reflect on the choices made by both individuals and tribes, and how their refusal to seek reconciliation led to one of the darkest moments in Israel's history. The conflict that erupted from the events in Gibeah wasn't just a battle, it was a tragedy that revealed the devastating cost of disunity and unchecked anger. The tribes of Israel, united in their outrage, declared war against the tribe of Benjamin. What began as a demand for justice soon spiraled into a bloodbath. The first two battles were unexpected disasters for the other tribes, with Benjamin's warriors proving to be fierce and highly skilled. Despite being vastly outnumbered, the Benjamites inflicted heavy losses, leaving the rest of Israel questioning their resolve. How could justice prevail when the guilty seemed undefeatable? But on the third attempt, the tide turned. The remaining tribes devised a strategy to draw Benjamin's forces into an ambush. This time, their plan worked, and the city of Gibeah was set ablaze. The war ended in a near-total annihilation of the Benjamite tribe. From tens of thousands of warriors, only 600 men survived, fleeing to the wilderness to escape destruction. This moment marks the peak of the chaos, a brotherhood torn apart, an entire tribe brought to the brink of extinction. What started as a quest for justice had devolved into a catastrophe. Was the cost of vengeance too high? Could this nation ever recover from the scars of such a brutal conflict? As the dust settled, a haunting silence remained. Yet, even in the ashes of war, the story wasn't over. What came next would reveal whether Israel could find a way to heal or whether the wounds of this civil war would remain forever. As the war ended, the tribes of Israel faced a grim reality: they had almost wiped out one of their own. With only 600 men of Benjamin left alive, an entire tribe stood on the brink of extinction. This shocking realization brought a wave of regret and a pressing question: how could they rebuild what had been destroyed? But there was a complication. During their initial outrage, the other tribes had sworn an oath not to give their daughters in marriage to the men of Benjamin. Now, this vow threatened the very survival of the Benjamites. The remaining Israelites were torn between their anger and their responsibility to preserve the unity of their nation. A controversial solution emerged. To provide wives for the Benjamites without breaking their oath, the tribes agreed to attack Jabesh Gilead, a city that had refused to join the assembly against Benjamin. From there, they took women and gave them to the remaining men of Benjamin. Even after this, there weren't enough women, leading to another contentious decision, allowing the Benjamites to take wives during a festival in Shiloh. These acts, though aimed at restoration, highlight the moral and spiritual confusion of the time. The decisions made were born out of desperation, yet they carried their own weight of injustice. In their attempt to right a wrong, the Israelites committed further acts that revealed the complex and flawed nature of human judgment when disconnected from divine guidance. But this resolution wasn't just about Benjamin. It reflected the broader brokenness of Israel, a nation struggling to find its way without a king or a unified moral compass. The cycle of violence, oaths, and compromise served as a painful reminder of what happens when a people drift away from their foundational principles. As the dust of the conflict settled, the question lingered: could Israel learn from this chapter, or was it destined to repeat the same mistakes? The story from the book of Judges, chapters 19 to 21, serves as a haunting reminder of the consequences that arise when moral decay takes hold and when individuals and societies abandon divine law. It reveals how quickly unity can break down and how easily vengeance and anger can spiral into irreversible destruction. In the case of the Levite and his concubine, the chain of events that followed their tragic fate demonstrated the fragility of justice when society is fragmented. The brutality faced by the concubine, the subsequent civil war, and the near extermination of the tribe of Benjamin all highlight the devastating effects of lawlessness and a lack of spiritual leadership. But beyond the violence and the war, this story speaks to a deeper truth. It is a warning about the dangers of moral relativism, the belief that what is right can be decided individually, without reference to a higher moral law. This mindset erodes the very foundation of community, leading to chaos and destruction. The resolution, while restoring some order, also highlights the complexity of trying to correct wrongs without proper guidance. The actions taken to save the tribe of Benjamin, though driven by compassion, were riddled with compromises and contradictions. The Israelites' attempt to heal the wounds of war only deepened the moral quagmire they were in. Ultimately, the book of Judges leaves us with a critical lesson: without divine wisdom and a commitment to higher principles, we are bound to fall into cycles of destruction, conflict, and regret. It challenges us to reflect on our own lives, our choices, our relationships, and our society, and ask ourselves, are we guided by a higher moral compass, or are we simply doing what seems right in our own eyes? As we conclude this exploration of one of the most troubling chapters in biblical history, may we take these lessons to heart. Only by returning to principles of justice, integrity, and divine guidance can we hope to avoid the tragic consequences that befell the people of Israel during this dark period in their history. Thank you for joining us as we explored one of the most intense and thought-provoking stories in the Bible. The events in the book of Judges remind us of the power of choices and the importance of upholding divine principles in our lives. If this story made you reflect on your own beliefs and decisions, make sure to subscribe to Legend Story for more insights into biblical teachings and their impact on our lives today. Remember, the lessons from history are timeless. It's up to us to learn from them and apply them to our own journey. Stay tuned for more stories that challenge, inspire, and guide. Until next time, keep seeking truth and wisdom. This outro wraps up the video while encouraging the audience to subscribe for more content and keep reflecting on the lessons shared. Let me know if you need any further tweaks.